Welcome to the Warframe Weapon Encyclopedia, where today we're checking out the Dark Split Sword. You can get the blueprint for the Dark Split Sword from the Tenno lab in your dojo, and it's definitely on the more expensive side of things, because on top of a fully built forma, you're also gonna need some mutagen mass and a fully built dual scanner, which you can get a blueprint for in the market. The Dark Split Sword is a mastery rank 5 melee weapon that does primarily radiation damage, with the second highest damage type being puncture, and it also has a decent amount of slash. Now the stats you can see here are actually deceiving, because it's only one half of the weapon, because this weapon is fairly unique, and you will see that when we go over to the stance portion in the arsenal. This weapon is able to equip stances for both the dual swords but also heavy blades, and it's because the Dark Split Sword can be both. If you equip it with a stance that would normally go with dual swords, it will become a dual sword, but if you equip it with a stance that would normally go with a heavy blade, it will become a heavy blade. And the stats of the weapon will change depending on which version of the weapon you're using. Here you can see a breakdown of the heavy blade version versus the dual sword version. You can see that on the heavy blade we have more damage, but we have lower crit and crit multiplier with higher status, higher range, lower attack speed and lower block angle. Now overall, the dual sword version is better because it has much higher crit, which is far more important, especially now after the blood rush nerf, which is actually somewhat convenient unless you really like heavy blades and you want to use it as a heavy blade, because the stance polarity on the Dark Split Sword is a double dash, which only matches one of the stances, and that happens to be for dual swords. So if you want to use any other stance, you're either gonna have to use normal format to change it into the appropriate polarity, or what I would actually recommend if you want to use the Dark Split Sword is to use stance format so that you can put on any stance and still get the benefit. Now the build on the Dark Split Sword is gonna be pretty much the same regardless of which version of it you're using. You're gonna go for a hybrid setup where you focus on viral and slash. Now the dual sword version isn't just better because of the stats. The stances for dual swords also tend to be a lot more aggressive with multi-hits and in general damage output. And the damage you can get out of the Dark Split Sword, specifically with the dual sword version, is actually quite good. You can do a ton of damage up front, and the slash procs you leave behind are gonna tick for a decent amount of damage as well. Though that is not to say that the heavy blade variant is terrible. It is still good, it's just not quite as good as the dual sword version because you don't have as much crit to scale with blood rush. And as a result of that, the single target DPS is just not gonna be quite as good. However, what is gonna be really good is AoE and cleave, because one thing heavy blades do have is a ton of cleave. So if you want to do AoE, it might actually be better to go with the heavy blade variant. The Dark Split Sword is the jack of all trades, master of none, but that is oftentimes better than a master of one, which is why I would recommend this weapon. You can switch it between single target with the dual sword and AoE with the heavy blade. So if you're a newer player that's looking for a weapon that's gonna do all the things and you can afford to build it, definitely go for it. And that's pretty much it, so I thank you very much for watching as always guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.